Yeah, so we're seeing if you can use mobile phones to improve the delivery of mainstream media into tribal communities in India. So often, rural communities are underserved by existing media channels because there are very few journalists that work in tribal areas that speak tribal languages and so on. So we're creating a citizen news platform called CGNet Swara that allows ordinary citizens to place a mobile phone call and record stories of interest over the phone, just using their voice. And then these stories are moderated by professional journalists over the internet and made available for listening either over the phone or also over the internet. So it kind of gives a global voice to very local people living in villages that can't typically voice their grievances and concerns and issues of local interest to the broader world. So Microsoft Research, first of all, does very fundamental academic research driven by the interests of kind of the researchers working there. And our group is interested in how technology can play a role in global economic development. And so we work in a lot of areas like healthcare, education, agriculture, and so on. And so here we're looking at kind of journalism and media, kind of participatory democracy. What's the role of new technologies in improving kind of, agency and representation of underserved areas in India?
Yeah.
And Microsoft has an interest because, it's an emerging market. Potentially in the future, there would be a lot of consumers of technology in these kinds of markets. So, what are the opportunities for kind of technology to play a role here? So this is something we deployed in early 2010, started by training a handful of citizen journalists in rural areas. And since then, we've seen about 1,500 calls per month into our system. And you see a wide range of stories being reported. Lots of reports of kind of environmental concerns in the community, concerns over liquor policy, over certain grievances with different government policies, kind of tribal communities that are taking control of kind of the forestry regulation and so on. So lots of different areas that are having some anecdotal impact on the political process there.
Yeah.
So we've seen cases where it's actually influenced local policy. Sure, so there was one situation where there's a policy in India called NREGA, which guarantees employment for part of the year to people living in rural areas. And there's a scenario where government-sponsored teachers had not been paid for an ongoing period. And that was reported over our system in a voice format. And it looks like anecdotally that helped to influence some policies which led to much more timely payment of those teachers. So those kinds of things where, you have something that's kind of fallen off of mainstream attention can kind of get a bump in visibility with this grassroots reporting structure.